Hello and welcome back to another episode of Money Illuminated, the podcast where we break down and simplify complex money and financial topics. This podcast is for general information only. It isn't classed as financial advice, and all the information we provide was correct when recorded. Today is a special episode, so it's luckily not just myself and our financial guru, Mr. Jack Saunders, talking today, but we also have a special guest where we're going to focus on making a will and the 5 things you need to know. So joining us today, and thank you very much for joining us today, is our head of estate planning, Freya Chuter. Hopefully I've pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, it's Chuter.
Perfect. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Worked with her for a year and you've already done that.
He's a trick one, though.
Yes, absolutely. But well, thank you for joining. How has your week been? And are you looking forward to today?
I guess we'll find out. Yeah, the week's been good. I've had a few days off, come back to some chaos. I'm ready kind of to get the weekend going.
Absolutely. And bank holiday it is. So any nice plans for it?
What am I doing? Sunday, I'm in London. So it's my partner's birthday, and he's dragged that out for a week now. So Sunday we're going to London, and then on Monday we're going to a spa, which would be really nice. What about you?
Lovely. I have got a barbecue tomorrow, which sounded great with the last 2 weeks being very sunny, and now it's meant to rain tomorrow. So, and that is really it. I've got quite a boring weekend, but I'm quite looking forward to it actually. And yourself, Jack? How about you?
Me and my fiancée Zoe, we are off to see some friends for the weekend. So yeah, I'm going to watch the Gillingham game tomorrow, which we'll see how that goes. I don't even know where they are or how good they are, so I'm sure I'll find out after a few beers. It'd be more enjoyable that way, I imagine. But yeah, so that barbecues, all of the nice stuff, and then who knows, maybe I'll squeeze in some golf on Monday if the weather's nice enough.
Yeah, I think I'll have to do the same as well. Brilliant. Well, really, I guess the key reason for having you on today, Freya, is me and Jack, when it comes to estate planning, don't really know what we're talking about. We can get by, but it's a real specialist topic. So it's really good to have you on. And I guess a really good place to start for anyone listening is, could you tell us a bit about yourself and kind of your role when it comes to the estate planning side?
Yeah, of course. So I head up the estate planning team at Illuminated, and kind of my day-to-day role is taking clients through the journey and kind of figuring out with them what they need. A lot of clients might come to you and think they have a preconception of what they want and what they need, but it doesn't always necessarily fit. So it's really kind of having those conversations and digging a bit deeper and finding out exactly what their situation is and what's going to work for them. So I take them through that journey, really.
Yeah. And it's really, really good work. And I think it's almost underwhelming or overwhelming the fact that no one really has their estate together. I don't know for yourself, Jack, what percentage of people do we come across that their will's 30 years old or they don't have one, and they're potentially even coming up to retirement age?
Yeah, it is scary. It's frightening how many people you speak to and they either don't know, or yeah, you say to them, what is in place, and they just say, well, it's just basic stuff. And I'm sure you'd agree, Freya, having something is better than not having anything, but often it doesn't really reflect what people actually want to do. So it's scary when you actually look at it, and we see people all the time where you're just sat there thinking, wow, how have they not sorted it? Yeah. I say that I didn't really have mine sorted properly until Freya joined, and now she's helping me sort mine out. So
we're getting there, though. So it's a good start. Most people don't have, a lot of people don't have anything in place. You had a will before, which I said I was very impressed with. So
one step ahead of me. So
yeah, exactly.
I guess that leads perfectly onto what would you say, Fred, is kind of the biggest misconception when it comes to wills?
I think if you have a picture in your head about the type of person that might need a will, everyone automatically assumes someone elderly. So I think the biggest misconception when it comes to wills is that people think you have to be a lot older to have one in place, and it's not the case. There's so many reasons why you would need a will. So I think, you guys probably agree, if you think about a will, a lot of people would think of a older person or older generation, you don't necessarily think of people our age, but it is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's become such a big part of our company and the services that we can provide. And I think that kind of perfectly leads us on to, I guess, what are some of the reasons why someone might need a will, or, why would I need a will, for example?
Yeah. Pretty much everyone needs something in place. You might have a very, very rare circumstance where someone has absolutely no assets. And that doesn't happen a lot, especially in this day and age. You've got something. Other than that, pretty much everyone should have a will. If you've got assets, so you've got a property, really important. Doesn't have to be anything eccentric. It could literally be standard, but it saves a lot of issues just having something in place. If you're an unmarried couple, so if you're partners, extremely important to have a will in place because it doesn't automatically pass over to the other person. So people assume these types of things and it's all going to go smoothly. That's not necessarily the way it works. Another important part is obviously if you've got minor children, in the will you can write who's going to look after the kids, so you appoint guardians. I could go on forever, but there are 3 things that are really, really important just to have a will in place, even if it's super basic.
Yeah, I guess that fits us perfectly, Jack, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're both fathers to pets, so that's one. Neither of us are married yet, both on the property market, so I guess we kind of fit all 3 points to most extent. Okay, great. No, thank you very much for that. And I guess that we'll then move over to yourself, Jack. So I think you're happy answering this side of things, but what if, for example, something happened to myself, I don't have a will in place, what would happen?
Yeah, I think Freya will have to correct me if I get any of this wrong, right? But it depends on whether you're married or not, or if you have a civil partner or not. So the most common case, I suppose, I don't want to be stereotypical, but the most common case is a married couple, but they don't have a will. And if you're married, you don't have any children, I'm pretty sure, Freya, please help me if I'm wrong, that
Yeah.
everything does just pass to the spouse if you've got no children, right? If you don't have
Yeah.
a will. Where it gets really messy is if you do have children, and people just, I think, assume that you're married, so everything goes to the surviving spouse, but that's not actually what happens. So when you're married and you have kids, you don't have a will. The first 322,000 of your wealth, whether that's property or physical assets and things like that, that passes to the surviving spouse. But then the rest is basically split right down the middle, 50-50. If you've got 2 children, for example, if you had 4 children, the other 50% would be split equally between 4 of them. So it can get very messy. And it's looking at, have you left enough for the surviving spouse to be comfortable and to survive and still be able to be comfortable financially and raise the family and so on. It could get incredibly messy. And I guess the other side of things is it could also impact inheritance tax and things like that if you don't have the right kind of planning as a married couple in place as well. If you don't have a spouse or a civil partner, so you and I, Elliot, we're both engaged to separate people, of course, but if we die or our partners die without a will, correct me if I'm wrong again, Freya, but does it go up to parents if that's the case?
Yeah. So if you haven't got children, it goes to parents. I've had situations like this before where there was a client at my previous job, and it was a little bit different, but she wasn't a wife. The lady, they were partners, and they never married or anything like that, but they had a son together. The property was solely in her name, so when she passed away, it couldn't pass over to him. So it ended up being in trust for the child. So that kind of situation, you're an adult with all this uncertainty, and your child basically has more assets than you do just because you haven't sorted out a will or put the correct planning in place. So scary situations like that can occur.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really good example of why it's so important to get your house in order, I guess, the phrases. Okay, great. Is there anything else to add on that side? Or is it a case of, we could probably go on for hours and hours on reasons to have a will. But I think another area that a lot of people get quite confused on is what the different types of wills are. Freya, would you mind kind of elaborating as to what actual types of wills are and what the differences are?
Yeah, of course. So you've got a few different things when it comes to this. In terms of actual types, you've got mirror wills. Mirror wills are usually put in place for partners or spouses that have very similar wishes. So if you've got the same sort of wishes that are going to carry out on each side, that's what we would look to do. And that's kind of the main will that someone might go for as a starting point. You've got mutual wills. Wouldn't usually recommend these. In fact, I don't think I ever have, but they are basically where someone can't change their will. So once you put it in place, if someone passes away, if you've got a mutual will, that's it. That's what happens. The surviving person cannot change a thing. Can be really kind of complicated, and you can't unravel them. So usually best to kind of stay clear of them. And then you've got single wills. Quite self-explanatory. It's just a single will for one person. And then if you kind of dive a bit deeper into that, you can have different styles of wills. So if you did a mirror will, you could also have trust work in there. Trust work is a bit more specialist, and we might look at that if a client has a certain need to protect an asset or needs some control over it, or kind of inheritance tax planning. So there's lots of different options. It obviously just depends on the client's situation, but the main one you'll find in terms of type is a mirror will.
Sure, sure. And if you're speaking to a couple that are married, for example, but they've been together a long time, or perhaps they're on the route to being married, do you still go down the mirror will path?
Yeah, provided they've got very similar wishes, you can have a mirror will. That doesn't make a difference at all. If they have really separate assets, like financials are separate, they've got separate wishes completely, like they wouldn't be leaving anything to each other, they're leaving it to other people, then that's when we would look at kind of single wills for each of them. But whether you're married or not married, mirror will's still fine as long as you've got similar wishes.
Perfect. So if they had almost children, but with separate partners through the years, perhaps that's the single route option.
Yeah, you could potentially do a mirror will with that if the bulk of it was similar, and then trust work within the document that separates out some differences. So you could kind of play around with it. I guess it just depends on what the client is wanting at the time, but you could have a single one if it was really different, mirror with maybe some trust work if you're looking to protect other like family members and things like that.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Excellent. So yeah, it sounds very, very specific to each person's circumstances. Okay, great. I think leading on to what I think maybe a lot of people get stuck at a hurdle with is they know they need to make a will, but they don't really know how to get started. So I guess what do people almost need before they start making a will, before they almost start that process?
So usually how it works with me, I think a lot of clients, some clients know exactly what they want. It's not always the right thing, but they come with an idea of what they're wanting. And some clients have absolutely no idea. But in terms of kind of broaching the subject and what you should kind of prepare, it's a good idea to have an understanding of what your assets entail. So kind of the vast of your assets and what you've got. Who you want to leave your assets to. Are there kind of any issues that might arise? Does anyone have any like vulnerabilities that need to be kind of taken care of? Who you want to look after children if you've got minors, and who you kind of want to be in charge of sorting out your estate when you pass away. So those few things, if you come to a conversation or a meeting with that, that's a great starting point. And then I can obviously find the route that we need to take after.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine finding those people that you want to look after it can be quite the conversation for a lot of people.
It's
You don't want to let anyone down, but some people you just don't want to be after it. So
the one that I think people find the most difficult is actually guardians. Obviously, looking after a child is a really big responsibility, and hopefully anyone that's kind of appointed in a will, you wouldn't have to assume that role, but sometimes you might. And I think that can be quite difficult to navigate, especially if both parents have different opinions on who would be kind of best to look after them. Kind of a good point on that with guardians specifically is if you don't have a will, you haven't written a guardianship clause. I've had some clients in the past appoint friends because they're best fit to look after them, not their direct family members. If you don't have a will and you're not kind of specifying that in the document, your friends would never be looked at. So it's just kind of making sure that what you want is actually going to happen.
yeah, and it sounds like it's fair to say the more detail you can add to a will, the better. And perhaps a lot of people almost have a very simple will, but actually it's all the little details that really then enforce what their wishes are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you don't have to make it complicated. It's just the more detail, the clearer it is of what exactly you're wanting to happen. So obviously a client can come to me and tell me what they're wanting, and I can make that happen within reason. Yeah.
The children side of things is probably the scariest bit, isn't it? Realistically, because
Yeah.
again, Zoe and I, we've had this conversation. We don't have children. We've got a fur baby, as they're. But yeah, we kind of had this chat beforehand. As when it does happen, who would we want to, raise children? And it's you have got to, definitely not you, Elliot. And yeah, you've got to think about the kind of logistics of it a lot more, haven't you? And it's like, yeah, well, you could just say parents if you're lucky enough that your parents are still alive when that happens, right? But they might not be in a fit state to be able to do it. It may only be a short period of time, and you've got to think about the financial kind of burden that you're putting on those people as well. So I can imagine it's one of the most common things that people just don't even realize that's such an important part. And yeah, it's not all about assets, like you said, Freya. It's about what you want to happen. And yeah, Elliot and I with my dog and your cat, obviously, it's even that. It's like, well, yeah, who would we want to look after them, and who's going to give them the best possible life and so on. It's
Exactly.
scary putting it in place.
And it's those types of things that people don't necessarily think about. I think when someone thinks about a will, they think of something really scary. And it's not that. What's scary is if you don't have one, because then that situation, like different situations can arise, which can cause conflict, issues down the line, can be not tax efficient. So having one in place, yes, it might seem like not the most enjoyable conversation to have initially, but the relief that people feel once you've got it sorted is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. No, I think this has been really, really useful. I guess the only other point I really had to kind of go through was how do you go about actually writing a will? Is there lots of different routes you can take?
So you can actually write your own will. Wouldn't recommend it, but you can. In terms of if we were going through the process with me, obviously kind of leads from the previous question, need to kind of know what you're wanting to happen, need to know what assets you have, so we can obviously make sure it's accurate. And you just need to basically either do it yourself, but I wouldn't recommend, or get someone to do it for you, like a legal professional.
Yeah.
The types of things you actually need is obviously details of the people that you're going to be mentioning. So names, dates of birth, addresses. Usually that's relatively straightforward for people to get because it's immediate family or immediate friends. Then obviously you have to make sure you're signing it correctly. Wills have to be signed in a very specific, signed and witnessed in a very specific way. If it's done incorrectly, then you don't have, you can invalidate your will. So that's super important. And that's one of the main reasons I would always recommend employing a professional to sort it out for you, because it's going to be written correctly. And it's also, they take you through that journey of kind of getting it witnessed, signed, so you know it's going to be valid.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we're talking about it being very important financially, but also it's to protect all your loved ones, you don't want to be around the bush and not fill this out correctly.
Definitely.
Great. Perfect. Well, I think it's a really good time for Jack to summarize the episode. I know he enjoys doing that. But is there anything else either of you would like to add before we kind of wrap this one up?
Not from my
I think
side.
we've covered off quite a lot, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that was really, really good. I think you've explained it really well, Freya, and it's similar to financial planning in a way, in the sense of, anybody can give it a go and try it themselves, but it's are you going to get it correct? Are you going to do it in the correct way and make sure all of the steps are followed so that it's valid and it's not void and things like that? But it's also the advice, right? Sometimes we think we know what we're doing, and we don't think about the things that we haven't thought of that can change the outcome, and that can make a huge difference. And it definitely does in, Elliot, what you and I do as a day job, and estate planning is no different. So having that advice is always going to be the most valuable part, and then having it done correctly.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And they go hand in hand perfectly, getting your finances sorted. I think everyone looking to sort that side of their lives out, the second part of it is sorting their estate out altogether.
Yeah.
So, but thank you very much, Freya, for joining. I think it's been a really, really useful episode. Thank you again, Jack, for joining us as always. But you've been listening to Money Illuminated. Thank you very much. And we look forward to speaking to you next time.